but yield ain't one. And mamas, don't let your babies grow up to sell soybeans. Thanks for listening, and remember to keep it independent with Whiffle's Hybrids.
Finding the right employees can be a real challenge these days, whether you're hiring full-time or part-time. That's where the regional radio stations come in. We're here to help you connect with the qualified candidates you need. Check out IllinoisJobPost.com. That's IllinoisJobPost.com. It's part of our comprehensive radio and internet employment campaign designed to get your job openings noticed. For details, just reach out to your account manager. Put the power of radio and the internet to work for you at IllinoisJobPost.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois. WHOW.
Top of the morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest in studio this morning is State Representative Reagan Deering, hot off of a late night veto session last week. Good morning, Reagan. How are you?
Good morning, Seth. I appreciate the Monday morning after a few nights of extra sleep and recovery this weekend.
We were supposed to catch up on Friday, and I had woke up and I jumped on my Instagram to see Chapin Rose had posted at 4:18 in the a.m. And I was like, oh boy, Reagan is going to be tired if we try to do this today. She might not even be thinking straight. So I'm like, let's do this Monday.
Yes,
so,
I think I wrote you back a bless you text because the House did adjourn a few hours earlier in the 2 a.m. hour before that, because what we had passed got kicked over to the Senate for the next step in the approval process. So yes, they were there.
But that's still another hour home for you. And, you know,
I do constantly say that I feel very fortunate that I commute to the Capitol. It's just under 50 minutes for me. So
there you go.
The ability to come home and remain grounded, see my family, love on my golden retriever, lower my blood pressure.
Nice. Yes. Love golden retrievers. They're the best. That's great. Well, all right, let's dive into why were you there so late, Regan? What was going on?
Well, you know, the interesting thing for me as a freshman member is this was my first veto session. And, you know, my understanding of those sessions are that we're to take up, any bills that the veto had come down from the governor over the summer. There were, I think, 3. We tackled one sort of early on, and then the rest of the session felt like a whole new fall session. I mean, we took up new bills, some things that were carried over from the spring, and it was just an unbelievable display of majority party rule. I felt very helpless.
Heavy-handed governance.
Very heavy-handed governors. I mean, we took up these major omnibus packages. Just
what does that mean? What is an omnibus package?
So, an omnibus bill means we're tackling a lot of things at once. I try to think of them as the damned if you do and damned if you don't type pieces of legislation, because there can be things that you would advocate for and support in the bill, and then there are some pretty big poison pills, maybe is a good term, that just are not something that myself as a conservative Republican could vote for.
But then that's where the rhetoric gets you, because it's like, well, Reagan Deering or Chapin Rose or Sally Turner, they didn't vote for this, so they don't support X, Y, or Z that's in there that's positive that you like.
You're absolutely right. And therefore, it's our responsibility to get out and tell the people what is actually happening. And that's been something I've been trying to work on. We can all do a better job of letting our constituents know what's coming before us. Unfortunately, these past 2 weeks of veto session, we didn't get a lot of advance notice. This summer, we knew that they were working on an energy bill and they were working on a transit bailout bill. So those 2 big things, a lot of the hubbub was, I'm not sure we're going to get it across the finish line. Even in the middle of the week, the transit bill we thought was dead. The second week, the governor didn't like, a lot of the high taxes that we all publicly push back on, streaming tax and entertainment tax, $1.50 delivery tax, any number of things. So in the final, 24 to 48 hours, those taxes were eliminated. And instead they decided to rob the road fund, which feels less painful because it's not necessarily seen as a quote tax to everyday Illinoisans, but it certainly is going back on our word to try and downstate, get some infrastructure dollars and fix our roads and bridges, which we have quite the list.
So what you're referencing is taking motor fuel tax money that was designated for downstate and shifting it to Chicago to fund their essentially failing mass transit system, correct?
Yes. And I think that we all are well aware that, transit is a big economic driver up in Chicagoland and those collar counties in northern and northeastern Illinois. And, we want them to have safe and reliable transportation. But it has been failing for quite a long time. Ridership is down. And interestingly, they're not doing necessarily fare increases. So it's not even a tax on the users of the transit system. I think I heard this week that, fares haven't gone up in over a decade. And, they're trying to find a fix. We want to solve a problem that's up there. But like everything else, it feels like the burden falls on so many of us here in central Illinois and southern Illinois that aren't even going to use that opportunity.
Meanwhile, in New York City, they're taxing the actual users of their mass transit.
Right.
So,
Now, we are going to get a tax on some users because they've increased toll fees. So if you want to travel up to the Chicagoland area, I think it's 45 cents extra per tollway booth.
Oh, how fun.
So if it's $1.25, you're going to see up over $1.70 now. And then for commercial and truck traffic, it's an overall like 30% increase. And when trucks are having to pay more to travel, costs are going to go up for us. So it's sort of an unseen burden, but it sounds good on paper.
I wonder, Regan, I just had this thought with you just a minute ago. You were talking about the motor fuel tax, the basically shifting the funding. So if we go back, motor fuel tax increased, 4, 5, 6 years ago, something like that. Like they increased the gas tax, and that was supposed to fund motor fuel, right? The increase in motor fuel. Do you think, I just had this thought, do you think even then they knew, like, hey, we're gonna promise this to downstate, and then we're gonna come back in later and say, nope, this is going to Chicago? Like, do you feel like that was the long play on this?
I would hate to think that, but even in just my first year, I have quickly learned that making deals doesn't always work out in your favor, and they have come back, and stripped things away or changed. And so, thinking about that shift, I got up and said on the floor that I have this year almost $50 million in infrastructure road projects just in the 88th House District. So just over 4 counties that I represent. And I worry now that are those going to be put on hold yet again? I made a joke about the mayor of Colfax, who just about anybody that comes to visit him, he'll take on a ride on Route 165 just to remind them how terrible it is. And that, that project is slated now. And so we're getting our hopes up for, a lot of these small town communities that.
Yeah. Wasn't there millions and millions of dollars? I mean, it might have even gotten into the B word, the billions, $1 billion some odd dollar infrastructure plan the governor passed,
Rebuild Illinois. I mean, we have been talking about this, and for anybody that drives around the state anywhere, I mean, even right out here.
Oh, it's awful. Going
on 51 north.
I will say they paved a lot of it. It's gotten a lot better, but there's still areas where it's
right here around Clinton. We sort of get that transition, where it fades off. We had a nice stretch coming north out of Decatur up to, past Maroa, Forsyth.
But then you get north to like the Wapella area. And
it's bad.
It's bad.
It's bad. You might lose a rim in there if you're not careful.
I have a question about that. I don't know if I've ever asked this on the air. I know I've asked a few people off the air. Do you think, and you're talking about this, and it goes along with this Rebuild Illinois package you're talking about, do they designate projects based on how certain areas vote along the lines of the roads and stuff? I
would certainly believe that there is some partisanship to the projects.
Right.
I think we've seen in other areas, Democratic officials do get their projects and their asks sort of to the front of the line.
Right.
I think a lot of that has been evidenced in this past spring's budget. It was $55 billion, the highest budget in state history. Our illustrious governor, since taking office, has increased our spending over 40% in just over 7 years of his time in office. So I have seen with my own eyes many a light item that is talking about just sort of $500,000 to $1 million funds that are going to projects in the district.
And if I'm not mistaken, didn't we have a Speaker of the House that was like the longest running speaker in the country's history? That I feel like he was notorious for that. I could be misremembering. I don't know.
Yeah, he was notorious, and Speaker Welch has continued that practice.
Yeah.
What we could have a whole nother show in talking about much needed ethics reform. That said speaker is now reported to prison and has actually been held accountable, which felt good for many Illinoisans. But not much has changed. We have the same
the corruption
playbook
is
rules.
all the same. Yeah.
I mean, even just this week in veto session, when we're in there, into the wee hours of the morning, they're suspending the rules. They have the majority votes. My House chamber is 118, and that's 78 Democrats and 40 Republicans. And the minimum number to pass a piece of legislation is 60. So, they can lose 18 votes or have people that are not available in the chamber and still pass what they'd like. So we're suspending the rules. We're not taking the allotted time to review the bill. It's not being read on 3 separate days. And so all bets are off. And for me as a freshman legislator, it's just mind-boggling. I mean, this is not what I signed up for. We're not governing well. We're not debating in a healthy kind of way. Even this transit bill, I know Speaker Welch is on the record as saying Republicans were at the table. And we did have a Representative, Brad Stevens, who's up in, the key area for our regional transit up there. And he was trying to advocate for the collar counties, the suburban areas, to have a seat at the table when we were talking a little bit about, the bill is so complex. It's board governance, it's funding, it's kind of multiple layers. And, he had the audacity to say Republicans had a seat at the table, and yet none of us voted for it. So, it feels again like we're being punished for votes, but I just refuse to vote for anything that's going to continue to cost my constituents and the rest of Illinois, ungodly amounts of money for a fix that, is long overdue and should be handled differently.
I'll tell you what, on that note, Regan, let's maybe dive into some of those things when we come back. Let's take a break and do that next. Again, with State Representative Reagan Deering in studio with us this morning. More to come on the WHOW Morning Show.
WHOW.
Weeknow.com.
Let's check the markets now on the RFD Radio Network. I'm Jim Taylor. Corn slightly lower, beans higher, wheat slightly lower. December corn 429.5 down 2. March corn down 1 3/4, 442 1/4. May corn 451 1/4 down a penny. November beans down 7.5, 1107 1/4. January beans 1122.5 up 7 1/4. March beans up 6.5, 1130 1/4. December wheat down 3/4, 533 1/4. March wheat down 1/4. 548 1/4. December bean meal 318.10 down 350. December bean oil 48.96 up 28 cents. Livestock trade January feeders up 460, 336.50. February live cattle up 230, 229.97. December lean hogs 80.10 down $1.17. Energy market December crude oil 60.94 down 4 cents. This is the RFD Radio Network.
At SIU Center for Family Medicine in Lincoln, our team makes it easy to get your flu shot and protect the people you care about most. Book your appointment now by clicking the SIU Family Medicine icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
DeWittDailyNews.com is the area's leading local news source 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Get the latest local news, obituaries, police splatter, weather forecast, and more with no paywall. Head to DeWittDailyNews.com to get the local information you need to know. DeWittDailyNews.com is the area's leading local news source 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Get the latest local news, obituaries, police splatter, weather forecast, and more with no paywall. Head to DeWittDailyNews.com to get the local information you need to know.
Netflix buffering, YouTube spinning, devices not connecting, Zoom calls dropping. It's frustrating. Let's end your frustration by signing up for fiber internet in Clinton. Click the Connexus icon at DeWittDailyNews.com.
Your friend in Central Illinois, WHOW.
Once again, good morning. Thanks for being with us. I'm your host today, Seth Lawrence. The WHOW Morning Show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agent in Clinton. My guest in studio, State Representative Reagan Deering. And again, Reagan, last week, veto session. You were there till the wee hours of Halloween morning. Let's dive into the transportation bill, because this is one that just you mentioned before we went to break, just has so many layers. What else is going on with this bill? What do you mean by that?
Well, so there's a governance piece where they are moving the Regional Transit Authority to now the Northern Illinois Transit Authority. And so they're shifting distribution. Oftentimes the governor and various boards have commissions and appointments and things. So there's a big shift there. And I know a lot of my colleagues in the collar counties around Cook County are frustrated that their voice is sort of being squelched in that structure, if you will. The goal is to... This was a question I asked on the floor. So as it currently sits, it's about a $260 million shortfall for the Transit Authority, which really sort of kicks in June. We were hearing about pink slips maybe and other things starting to happen then. So right now, it's obviously a crisis in the middle of veto session on the last day that we are then proposing a $2 billion package to save the Regional Transit Authority. So I think I made a joke about only in Illinois would we have a $260 million problem and a $2 billion solution. But, there are things about how we're going to fund the transit. You and I were talking briefly about what is going to be the shift in sort of road fund dollars. It used to be 55% of those taxing dollars came to downstate, which I now learned is just everything outside of District 1 for transit. So basically Northeast Chicago. Even my colleague in Rockford informed me that he is in downstate. And one of his projects is getting the Metra out to Rockford. So I assume quite a bit of our dollars left are going to go to that. The entire rest of the state
is downstate.
Right. I mean, Rockford is northwest of Chicago. Yes. So, we've got all the way out to the northwest. We've got south of I-80, which includes us right here in central Illinois. And then we could travel another 4 hours south to the bottom of the state. And in the new formula, 15% of those funds are going to come to downstate and 85% are going to be held up in that Chicagoland area. So again, just another imbalance of power. We have projects down here we want to see fixed. They're raising toll fees. I mean, that's going to generate money. There's also some increased sales tax structure for Cook County and some of the collar counties from 0.25% to 1%. That's going to be a tax on everything.
Well, and that leads to, okay, they're raising, like every session, they raise this tax, they raise that tax, and it's they find a new one every session. And it's like, okay, this is going to generate money and it will do this. But then it's like, why do you need to continually raise taxes if you raised this tax last year or however long ago that was supposed to address this stuff? It makes zero sense.
Well, Seth, in the state of Illinois, we have a tax and spend problem. We have a mismanagement problem. And
do you watch The Office?
I don't.
Oh, never mind. I'll save that for another time.
And people are leaving, and rightfully so. I mean, it's just, when is it enough? As I mentioned earlier at the start of the program, our state budget is going up every single year, and there's not an effort for reductions. There's not an effort for consolidation. There's not an effort for, thinking about pension fix. Every new state employee that we hire comes with a salary and benefits and a pension package.
And a pension, of course. Yeah.
So, there are definitely commitments that we have made and we need to honor. But going forward, we need to start thinking about an actual solution. So people are just fed up. I got so many calls all week saying, what are we doing? I can't wait to leave this leave this state, or, hey, my farm is here. Hey, my grandkids are here. And every layer of government seems to be finding an additional tax.
Right. Well, it's all about creating dependencies, and
yeah, I think that's been an interesting conversation this week as well, with the federal government shutdown, and SNAP benefits being paused November 1st. So that was this weekend. In my career before becoming an office holder, I was working with the Northeast Community Fund in Decatur, and food insecurity is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have a number of residents that come to us who are more often than not receiving SNAP benefits and have to come for an additional resource in what is our local food pantry. And the reality is we have created an overdependence on welfare.
Yep.
And it's on full display here in Illinois. I am so grateful for private donors and foundations that continue to keep, a food pantry like Northeast Community Fund operating. But, we've got to get people to work. We need to get people budgeting. We need some of that sort of self-reliance and independence. So I absolutely wish that our government would be working, on those issues as well, instead of just plugging the hole. I know the governor made an executive order directing some of our state funds. I think it was $20 million to bail out our food banks. And then, the devil's in the details. It was only 7 food banks that got the money. We have almost $2 million.
$20 million going to 7 places.
That's what I've read.
Wow.
Yes. I mean, but for almost 2 million people in Illinois, the federal SNAP benefits, because it's 100% federally funded program, it's about $330 million a month.
Oh, wow.
Just in Illinois.
Yeah.
Just in Illinois. So
Yeah.
Shame on Illinois for not really having a rainy day fund.
And this came up during COVID, right? This happened during COVID, correct? You had so many more people needing government assistance because they were out of work, and there was some fund. I don't know if it was SNAP or what. It obviously it wasn't SNAP, but there was some program massively underfunded, and it was a huge problem that people just weren't getting the help that they had basically been promised. I mean, that's the other part of it, is the government makes all these promises, is we'll help you, we'll do this, we'll do that, and then it's like, well, then the money's not there, so
the government giveth and the government taketh away.
Exactly. I know Reagan energy was a big topic of the veto session. Let's dive into energy real fast.
Yeah, so a huge energy omnibus bill came through as well, and just the understanding of how sort of the sausage was made. The minute that the bill passed, some of the main sponsors and leadership in the majority party went out the doors of the chamber to just a huge roar. And the number of lobbyists and environmental groups that were just pushing everything that is in this bill. I mean, the reality is I don't actually see how our ratepayers are saving money out of this bill, despite the majority party coming out with their sales pitch that yes, in fact, we're going to see lower bills. I mean, even something like battery storage is something we're talking about. We live in Illinois. It's not sunny and windy all the time. Our wind and solar projects are not going to be enough. And on the other hand, we're closing down our coal-fired power plants.
Right.
Part of the conversation, which I'll maybe circle back to in a minute, is natural gas and nuclear, which is a big deal right here in Clinton. But battery storage, so we can save power on the grid for when, we do have a high peak. Every ratepayer is going to get a battery storage fee
Tax
on their bill.
Yeah. Sure.
I mean, and I already have been saying this since the spring when we were talking about energy. I mean, I'm an Ameren customer. 20% of my bill is now going for
renewables
or fees or energy efficiency, and I don't usually get the benefits to that. So,
sure.
I mean, this is a major problem.
Sure. Well, we're gonna have to leave it there, Regan. Unfortunately, State Representative Reagan Deering in studio with us. Network news on the way.